Hey Ben, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, Eran?
I'm very good. Yourself? I think it's morning time on your place, right?
Yeah, it's just past 9 a.m. Mountain Time here in the Pacific Northwest of the United States.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, first and foremost, thank you for joining my little show here out of Israel. And I will of course let you introduce yourself, but I think it's a proper time just to kind of tell our audience that what we are going to do today is pretty much talk about partnership as usual. But we are going to touch more thoroughly through partner engagements and other aspects, just because of your great and rich background around partnership, and for the fact that you are having executive role within Magentrix, which is a PRM platform. And we'll touch on that as well, on the tech stack that is most matter for the head of partnership and partnership team in overall. So thanks again for coming in. It will be a great call, I'm sure. The floor is
Yeah,
yours.
of
Tell
course.
us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're coming
Yeah,
from,
well,
where you're heading.
yeah. Well, Eran, thanks for having me. It's an immense pleasure. I know we've been friends for a little while, and watched kind of both of us develop as time has gone on. But so I'm Ben Cornett, Dr. Ben Cornett. I wrote a dissertation on the topic of partner ecosystems. If you want to go read the 500-page document, you can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, it's extremely boring, I might say. It's the one moment in my life when they capped me with the doctoral title that I was an expert in partnerships for about 35 seconds, and then someone else came out with new research. But a little bit about my journey. I've been in the tech space, SaaS as a professional my entire career. Since young age, many years ago, more than I like to count around. I started specifically with a company in the fintech space, and at that time I was in a marketing role. So I really focused more on the marketing aspect in the very early years. This is about 15 years ago. I was a head of marketing, but all of our marketing efforts were going through partners. And so this was in the loan origination space, where here in the U.S. Mortgage lenders used a platform that generated compliant documents for people to sign when they purchased homes. And our partners that we were selling through, that little did I know I was in the partner world back then, were loan origination systems. So software platforms that basically gathered the data to be able to use XML technology to fill out these documents so they're compliant. From there, I morphed. I grew and I learned. I spent several years in that role, and then I morphed into a new role, also in fintech, with a company called Count. Count is basically an anti-fraud solution global. And I was really introduced to the depth of very strong partnerships, including partnerships with Braintree, PayPal, JP Morgan, Cayenne, TSYS, WorldPay, the list goes on. All the major payment processors around the globe used Count to protect their organization against card not present fraud. And so I spent a lot of time working with those partners, enabling those partners, engaging those partners so we could grow together and really co-sell a solution that reduces fraud, which unfortunately is a worldwide problem still today.
Yeah.
And then over time, I eventually got tired of fintech. I don't know. My wife saw that I was traveling a lot in that world. One year I put a little over 170 nights on the road, and she's like, "Well, I didn't get married to stay
I'm
single
with
and
you.
home."
I feel for you.
Yeah. It was horrible. It was fun. I got to go to a lot of great places all over the world, and it was a good learning experience. But nonetheless, then I kind of morphed into a partnership leader role at a background screening company here in the United States, SaaS software. They integrated with 140 different HR tech platforms. ATSs, HRM, HCMs, different platforms. And it was really interesting. That's really when I think my career matured probably the most in the partnership world. The journey kind of was, pretty clear that was what I was good at, is building relationships with partners, enabling partners, and empowering them to drive revenue. And, fortunately, that company, what it taught me when I was there was really how to quantify the value of partner engagement and quantify the value of a deal registration and being able to prove ROI. And quite honestly, I'm very grateful for that opportunity to learn with that company, because what we found, this is during COVID. So this is, everything shuts down. A background screening company, if you might imagine, what they do when they, if you're not hiring, you're not screening, and there's no revenue. And what we found is because our partners were so engaged and so powerfully enabled to be able to do good work, is our business survived COVID, and our revenue in our partner ecosystem went to where 85% of our revenue, it actually got up to 92% at one time, was coming through our partner channel. So at that time, we shifted as a company, and I led the entire partner program as well as the marketing team. And every marketing dollar we invested was connected to a partner. And we completely stopped going direct market. And that was really a pivotal point for me to realize, holy crap, this is powerful. And that whole idea of partner ecosystem become so much more meaningful in my career. And then since then, in May, I joined the team at Magentrix. We are a PRM. I'm not here to offer Magentrix or sell Magentrix. I'm here to tell you my story, right? And
Absolutely.
at Magentrix, I joined their team back in May. I've been a customer of theirs for 7 years, almost 8 years, and used the platform to be able to, show my success. And I just engaged with the team so much. I loved it. I head up strategic partnerships with Magentrix here. And what that means is basically I'm still doing what I've always done, is I'm building relationships, identifying opportunities throughout the ecosystem, whether your partners, customers, where we can co-create value and co-create value for the end user, right? The customer at the end of the day. So that's a little bit about my journey, where I'm going. That's a good question. That's a really good question. Where I'm going, I did do a dissertation, Eran, so I think someday I probably will go academic, but I'm trying to save that a little bit for more of the retired years.
Fantastic. Well, that's a great journey, by the way.
Yeah.
And you've touched a couple of I think very interesting topics that we might want to kind of dive in. How to cross, downturns, period where the market is within heavy challenges with headwinds, and what needs to happen from a partnership perspective, and how partnership can actually influence the way you kind of make it through that, right? And coming out of those tough times. That's one thing. The other thing is, of course, your perspective, because you are part of a great company of Magentrix, and your customers is pretty much head of partnerships. So you have a very, very unique kind of understanding or insight into what goes between their ears, right? And what they're going through these days. And we'll, of course, touch those. But let's start with the common question that I have for every single guest of mine. What is partnerships for you?
That's a good question, Eran, and it's a question I wish that we had 10 hours to talk about, because I think we could probably talk about that for 10 hours.
Right.
And unfortunately, I'm gonna go to my academic mind a little bit, because I studied this pretty intensely, right? Partnership is all about what I might call co-creation. So back in 2004, this is me going academic, so I apologize, but back in 2004, there's a couple of researchers that discovered kind of a new model, if you will, of the typical marketing mix. In the marketing world, you hear, product, place, promotion, and all that, right? And so they actually did some research, and they found that the idea of what they called what the service logic value is, basically that things are actually co-created as a result of exchange of service, and now no longer for money. And this is like many, many years ago. And that's evolved until current time, to where co-creation is really the center. You think about that for a minute. You go back to the early days of companies like Google, Gmail, or Dropbox. Dropbox is probably my favorite example. Dropbox used to go in, and at the bottom of their email campaign, they had, or when you logged in, it's like refer someone, right? And they would much rather have you refer people back then than really make the subscription fee of whatever their subscription fee was, because that was an endorsement of value. And so that idea of co-creation, it's maturing quickly, rapidly in today's world. And for partnership, for me, is all about the co-creation. I think of it the 4 C's, right? It's co-creation of value, it's collaboration, so we actually work together, and we're working on making sure that we're communicating well, so it comes into communication. But we have a common objective, right? And the common objective can't be just to win revenue. The common objective in partnership world, in my world, is how do we help solve problems? How do we help our client, our customer, our joint customer, really genuinely want to help them win or reach their objective? And then obviously partnerships for me, Eran, is really focused on being customer centric. If the customer's not at the center of the partnership and it's you and me, none of us are really going to grow. And if we're genuinely trying to take care of that co-creation of value, me and my partner and the customer all together, that co-creation, we're going to create revenue at the end of the day. There's no question. So partnership, it's all about that co-creation, collaboration, common objectives, and being customer centric.
This is a great way to put, kind of a perspective of what partnership is all about, because, we have dealt with different type of partnerships that serve different function that we would like to have, right? And that's the reason we actually team up with other companies, right? That have other expertise or have other strengths, which we don't have in-house, right? So we reach out to them in a way, and you were just mentioning co-creation. So how we bring more value at the end of the day to our mutual customer, which is super, super important.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember that co-creation, Eran, to your point, it's not really about how we, Magentrix and Partner Now, for example, how we bring value to the customer. It's how we work with the customer, because the customer is part of that co-creation equation, right? That service dominant logic idea is that the customer is involved in that process. It's not that, we're all taken apart. And that kind of puts a little bit more unique perspective. You mentioned, I do work for a PRM, but the reality of Magentrix is so much more than just a partner relationship management platform or partner ecosystem platform,
right?
Because we also offer customer portals. So we see both. We have customers using us for partner and for customers, and everything comes together in that co-creation of value. And really, when you can do that co-creation and bring the customer into the conversation, you get sticky customers, right? You get to where you're getting that 85%, 90% of revenue coming through a channel, through your indirect sales efforts. And of course, that takes time to build and evolve, but it's really, really an exciting world that I get to see.
Yeah. So that co-creation that you are focusing on or talking about very passionately, what it takes to do a well thought co-creation when you're a vendor, what's the most important ingredients or building blocks that you actually focus with your customers to kind of taking them through that journey that, hey guys, this is what you need to do. This is how things should work.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think, I'm always probably going to say this because I'm a partnership person, is relationship is at the core. You've got to really sincerely have the interest of that end client in mind. It's got to be, you're listening more than talking, paying attention to their needs. I was actually on a call on Friday last week, and basically on one end was saying, hey, this is the project. I need a platform that can do X, Y, Z. On the other end, we're starting to ask, okay, that's what you want, but can we go through a discovery phase and really dig into the requirements and really dig into the whys that you're choosing to do X, Y, Z? And, the customer came back and, they said, well, no, this is just our requirement. Can you do it? And we're like, how do you answer a question like that? It's like, yeah, I can do it, but is it really going to service you well, right? Is it going to help you, get to your end goal? And at that point, sometimes you turn away from those. So, that relationship and understanding that, hey, we really have the best mind. We're not just trying to upsell you, if you will. We really have your end objective, that common objective that we all agree on, that this is where we want to go. You're going to get so much more value, right? I mean,
Right.
and having a real relationship with, with obviously the customer, but as a vendor, having a real relationship with that customer as well, and asking the tough questions, and not just being there for the quick win, being there for a long-term relationship, because we all know the old story of how much it costs to get a customer. It costs so much more to keep a customer. It's not even comparable. So, it's really important to do it right from the beginning.
So, we were discussing a PRM, so partnership relationship management platform, but I think it's a little bit more than that, because it's not just about the relationship, it's also about the engagement. Because I think at the very core, having a successful partnership in any sort requires high engagement from both parties. That's the way it works. So why it's so difficult? Why it's so challenging today to get companies to raise the engagement rate?
I think that, Eran, if I had the magic wand and I were king for a day and I can make something change, I would turn off a lot of noise. The number one, we've heard all these different ideas of economies, right? But the economy that's struggling the most right now is what I call the attention economy. Everyone is so busy. There's so much noise. I mean, my device has pinged me 12 times in the few minutes that we've been on the phone. And so with all that noise coming at us all the time, it's like, how do I prioritize? And then all of us live lives. We have families, and you might see my 3-year-old daughter pop in a princess dress in a minute, but we all have lives. And you've got all these pressures of the world of, okay, what matters most? And, it makes it really hard to get people to engage in things that really aren't the top priority. Well, you think about revenue and growing business and all that, definitely a priority, but engagement has to come to meet the actual user where they are. And, being able to drive engagement via SMS technology, or drive engagement, where that person is when they're there, and having the data to know when, that's where data comes in so important, is knowing how often and when do people want to be engaged. You have to meet them where they're at. And I think that's kind of a, really a magic sauce that I've learned in my career, is to meet people where they're at. And then I think also when you create partnerships, is to have what I like to call open, honest, fearless communication, right? Don't be afraid to have tough conversations. Our partner program, one of our programs, there's a minimum referral requirement in our referral program. And sometimes I have to have tough conversations like, hey, this was the agreement. We'll pay recurring perpetual revenue, but the agreement was we're going to get so many referrals in the year. And hey, we haven't had that. What's going on? How can I help? It's not so much, hey, what's going on? We're going to terminate you. It's what's going on? How can I help? And can we build a plan to get there? And because that relationship, at the end of the day, we could burn the bridge and, everything goes worse than it is now. So open, honest, fearless communication is really, really a key aspect of how I try to live my, life daily.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
But that engagement, it's from the get-go. It's having that, clear set expectations, if you will.
It's interesting because because a lot of companies are actually measuring engagement, right? Because one of those KPIs out there is to kind of seeking, how well we engage with our partners. What requires to win their mind share, your time share, right? Because that's kind of that's what we compete against, because every partner of ours every day is not selling just one single product solution, right? Offering. They have a broad range of services that they provide. Some partners do have tens of different solutions in hand, right? So what can a company do, right, in order to kind of increase that mind share?
Yeah. And I think there's a really interesting point. At the previous company I was at, in the HR tech space, we learned that if we could get a simple login to the partner portal, we started with login, right? What's the one thing we wanted people to do? And obviously, in the back of our mind, the biggest thing we wanted people to do was deal registration, right? It's revenue, it's grow revenue and pipeline. At the back of the mind, that's what we was. But what we found is if we could get people to engage in our partner portal, and we use different methods, I'll go through a few of those in a minute, but if we could get them to engage in our partner portal at least once a week, the user, the end user, right? If we can get the AEs, if you will, engage once a week, we saw that that partner was 76% more likely to register a deal. That's a big impact. And so, we used a number of methods, right? So first of all, at the core to be able to power all this is the right tech stack, whether that's Magentrix or another PRM, is having the right tech stack to be able to empower that. But some of those things that we did is that tech stack needs to be able to integrate seamlessly, like with your CRM, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, Dynamics, whatever it is. That integration is core, because the data that you're going to use to be able to drive engagement has to be able to come from that PRM. In this case, in my case, it was Magentrix, to Salesforce, to where, and we use Salesforce to where we could actually use the data points like last deal registration, last login date, did you complete training, certification, when's the last time you redeemed a reward or incentive. All those were data points for us to do campaigns using marketing automation tools. And at that company, we used a platform called Pardot, which is part of the Salesforce ecosystem. And I've used HubSpot to do that as well. So you think about, okay, what can you do to drive engagement? Well, again, first of all, I think is to make sure you get people engaged in your platform. You need the tech stack to be able to use as kind of that leverage point to say, okay, this person is moving along. They're on the path or in the funnel or on the journey, whatever, however it looks to your organization, right? And then to offer the right tools. Training and support is definitely core. So when partners come on, you want to put them through an onboarding program of some sort, whether you do that one-on-one and you take that time, or you do that through a built-in LMS to your PRM, a learning management system, whatever that is. But being able to enable partners with, okay, I know what the product is, I know what I'm selling, I know what I'm offering, referring. That's important. Certifying them if that's required in the products you're selling.
That's an option.
And then along that incentive, what I think the one thing that drove engagement most in my experience is our rewards program. And the rewards program is interesting because my experience around is we create a relationship with a partner, a company and Magentrix, for example, create a relationship, and maybe we have some kind of a joint revenue share when a referral comes, or it's a reseller where they got some special pricing to resell the product, whatever that looks like. There's something in it for the company. The thing that's missing in my experience has been, what's in it for the AE? What's in it for the person boots on the ground doing the work? And a lot of times organizations miss that. And, I found that when we provide incentives for logging into the portal, we do it in form of points. So you get so many points logging into the portal. You get, points when you do a deal registration. If it's a deal registration highly connected to.
So it's kind of a gamification, right?
Yeah. There is a leaderboard. Yeah. And if you have a partner that's got, 15 AEs, guess what the AEs want? Spot number one.
Yeah, always.
So,
always.
And you and I were at Partnership Leaders. I think you met Bruno. You remember Bruno Yoffe from Asana?
Yeah.
So he was there at Partnership Leaders, and he had a jacket in the morning when it was a little bit cool in Miami from Pentagonia. And he was a partner of mine when I was in the HR tech company. That Pentagonia jacket is a little over $400. He bought it with his points from logging in to a partner portal and submitting deals. And so, it's.
I don't really want to tell you how many jackets I do have from my past days.
Yeah, and then you think about, okay, our rewards program, it turns into, Amazon gift cards. I don't know how many things I bought for my wife through that kind of program, but at the end of the day, when we do a partnership agreement for, revenue share, most companies don't really spiff or benefit the AE. They want them to focus on core product, and we do too. But there's really an easy transition when you can bring it all together, reward the company, reward the AEs, and grow business together. And that drives value in the portal because they know when they go into the portal, that engagement, they get into the portal, they see their points, we run pop-up campaigns. Hey, it looks like you have 50 points shy of X. Go register a deal, right? So you can drive all kinds of campaigns to drive engagement.
Yeah, I love gamification and I love, and I think, sales, well, it depends, it always depends on how you measure your, AEs or customer success or, system engineers, right? And because that sometimes can drive different outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to be very careful.
You could drive bad behavior. Yeah, you could drive horrible behavior, right? The other component of that engagement, my experience with, when I was at the background screening company, is we had partner relationship managers, partner business managers aligned to books of business, right? They had a dedicated resource and joint business plans to help them grow together. And really that goes to that training support comment, right? We want to enable people with not only training, but the support and really, engagement and automation works so far. It's just like the world of ChatGPT today, right? Yeah. If all this AI works really good, but by itself, it can't really solve all of our problems. But when you combine it with human experience, it becomes so powerful. And I think that's the same with, any kind of engagement program that you're trying to drive engagement. You've got to have the phone calls. You've got to have the personal emails. You've got to have the text messages on the birthdays and things like that to drive the relationship. Because again, it comes down to the core, the relationship that you have with the people. At the end, we're all people,
Yeah, of course. So, I'm dealing with a lot of startups. We're talking to a lot of startups. And I think in the startup world, we all see that kind of the engine that drives revenue at first is, of course, the direct sales motion, right? They want to build logos. They want to understand, how well the market is reacting to whatever they provide them with. But how early you think startups should engage with sort of a partner program, or even think about building another motion which is based on ecosystem and partnerships? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I love that question. And I love that question mostly because in the dissertation research I did, Eran, so I in my research, I analyzed small businesses, and that was defined by organizations between 50 to 150 employees. And the goal was to identify if they had partners, and then if they knew any measures against what success looks like for them. It's how they interpreted value of their partnership. And what I found in the research is, I interviewed, I don't know, probably 1,000 companies, C-level, right? CEO, owner, founder, not an employee. And as I interviewed them, of all these interviews, I ran across one company that had a clear-cut idea of what the value came in from their partners. And when you think about partners, it's more than just, downstream. It's about that ecosystem that you mentioned. And everyone that I interviewed, I'm going to say everyone, but I think there were 3 companies, but most everyone had some kind of a relationship, whether it's with the Chamber of Commerce in the community, right? Or with, someone that they've worked with in the past, or it's with a company that has sent them referrals in the past. They all had that, but no one could quantify it. No one knew really what they were doing. I think organizations as startups, they actually probably have partners in the process from the ground up. I really, really find it hard to believe that you're going to find an organization doesn't have someone that's either consulting or someone that's providing input that will impact the overall ecosystem of their business. And I think we have to think that way, right? I don't know necessarily we have to monetize everything there, but we have to think that way. And so now what you do becomes super important. And how early do you start kind of a downstream process? That's really hard to tell. It depends on if you can get access to people that can represent your brand, what you stand for, your vision, values, mission, and all that. And, they're aligned because, if you can get that early on, I think more and more organizations today are going to turn to that partner-led initiative. And you think about today's world, layoffs are happening all over. I don't know if you're seeing them there in Israel,
We do.
Okay, they're happening all over, right?
All over the place. Yeah.
And yeah, and so what organizations that are well funded, already structured, not necessarily all the startups, they're structured and funded, is now they're realizing, okay, they've got these shareholder values to meet, they've gotten this additional pressure to grow, and they've just cut their staff. How do we do it? Well, one way to do it is through that indirect channel, right? And they then scale and pressure. And so we're seeing an increase. And that's kind of viewpoint unique you mentioned that I get, is we're seeing an increase of people saying, okay, we know we have to do this. Now we are missing a component. Maybe it's a part of a tech stack to be able to go and deliver that. And, but I think startups, you know, when you think about, I would think as a get-go, you're a brand new company, think about who are the people that influence my organization, whether from the planning phase, you know, at some point down the road, they probably, if you've implemented some things, you've listened to them, you've built a relationship, they're probably going to be supportive of your organization down the road when they hear about an opportunity. So I think it's never too early, but
so you already have the
investing,
ingredients, right? You already have the
yeah,
ingredients. You have kind of the first seeds, right? That you
yeah,
put in the ground, and you can build something around it.
yeah. And I think, you know, the organizations I interviewed in the dissertation research is, you know, everyone had components of that, right? But they couldn't recognize it. They couldn't interpret what that meant to them. They couldn't connect the value of what that means to them. But, you know, it's interesting in some of the conversations at the end, they're like, oh, wow, I never thought about that's what I've done. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool. You know, because I don't know how many times it's like, yeah, I've been involved with my local chamber of commerce in a small business. This is a, you know, 50 to 150 person company. They're involved with the local chamber of commerce. And because of that involvement and participation, they get business referrals by going to the meetings, right? Or they're involved with the Rotary Club or Lions Club or whatever the program is. Those are, in a roundabout way, a part of your ecosystem that people just don't recognize that brings value to the organization.
So just to kind of lead with that idea, let's talk a little bit about communities. We both sharing one of the I think the greatest communities around partnership, which is Partnership Leaders. You know, we met there in person, of course. It was wonderful back in Miami. Looking forward to the ones in Denver in a few months from now.
Yeah, I can't wait.
How important are communities in your sense?
Yeah.
What's the role of communities within partnerships?
Yeah, so you know, you think about going way back in history, right? Back to the times of Sigmund Freud and Adler, and some of the psychological research that's been done. You know, Adler's research stands out the most when you think about what it means to be psychologically healthy. It means he claimed that on a thing he called belonging. And so all of us as humans, we, even as little kids, we want to belong. And community allows us an opportunity to belong. And Partnership Leaders, you know, to your point, has probably been one of the funnest communities I've ever belonged to. You know, by having a community and not being afraid to share, you know, your secrets, you know, how the magic sauce, you know, I think being open, honest, fearless, and being able to really share ideas and tips and communication has been huge. Now that's huge for me as a head of partnerships, right? And I'm sure it's good for you there, Eran, as well. And many other members of Partnership Leaders, you know, I highly, highly endorse Partnership Leaders. You know, there's a couple other community, like Partner Hackers got an interesting community. They do some pretty interesting stuff. There's a lot of different organizations, but at the end of the day, you got to find where you belong. And now when it comes to partner programs, you know, you want to build a community there too. And in the fintech space, with that count that I mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to do that because we brought our partners together, even though they're competitors. We brought them together to exchange ideas. You know, we hosted a partner event down in Orlando, took them all to SeaWorld, had a good time together, ate a lot of good food. But we wanted to bring them together as a community so they know that they're all kind of doing the same thing and they're all trying to solve the same problems. It wasn't so much that they're trying to compete one another, it's sharing best practices and ideas. And when you do that, it was interesting when people show up for the event, they're shaking hands, kind of distant, you know. And when people leave to the event, they're
Everybody's
friends.
hugging and friends.
Everybody's
It's
hugging.
amazing, yeah.
They love each other. And, you know, and then they come back and say, can I sign up for next year? And can I sign up for the year after and the year after? And you know, what that does is it creates a community, you know, within your partner program, you know, of where ideas spark, how to, maybe you want ideas to make, you know, a software better, or maybe there's legislation that you're lobbying against, whatever that might be, but you can enroll people within that community to help out. Now there's going to be the bad apples, you know, every community
Always.
has to have the ugly duck, or bad apples, or whatever you want to call it. But, you know, I think, again, there's so much power in belonging. And that's from a fundamental human sense. We all want to belong, whether it's belong to a family, if you're a 2-year-old, like my little girl,
Mhm.
or you belong to an organization like Partnership Leaders as a professional. All of those things are important, right? And if we think about community, we always have to think about belonging. I'll give you a quick example. You know, the little 2-year-old that throws herself at the door, right? She throws herself at the door and starts banging on the door because she wants to see daddy. All she has is a little sign around her head that can explain, daddy, I really want to feel like I belong as part of your team. You know, that's all she's trying to
So
say.
cute.
And it puts a perspective. I don't go yell at her. I actually changed my LinkedIn profile. It says, hey, you might see my daughter in a princess outfit in my office. And that's okay. We're all human, and we all want to belong. And so I think if we think about communities, they're so powerful. Here.
I agree. I agree. I think pick a couple of communities that really you can, first and foremost, get some, share your passion, right? Share your ideas, get your insight and spread it. And you mentioned fearless, right? Be
Yeah.
honest, right? Not to be afraid to share that with the people that are like you. They're going through the same challenges, they're facing the same hurdles on a daily basis, right? But it's amazing how those communities kind of having a driving force behind so many people and assisting them to elevate their professionals, right? And excel in their duties and roles, right, in companies, and kind of the sharing of data and sharing of insights really create something that is so unique, which you cannot recognize in other places, because, as you mentioned, you know, in some places out there, people are kind of guarding. They have the guarding rail. Why they're not sharing, uh,
Yeah.
or they might want to share, but they don't know how. But this is kind of
Yeah.
a very great platform to do just that. Changing
Yeah.
gears, okay?
Yep.
Head of partnerships. It's always amazing me to kind of get into their heads, right? To understand what they're going through on a daily basis. What's their challenges? What they're focusing on, because that actually challenged me um, as an advisor, right? In some sense, as a friend in some other senses, right? How can I help? So what we can do to kind of assist those guys in their day-to-day activity. So from your perspective, because you're talking to a lot of other partnerships,
Mm-hmm.
what's are kind of the top 3, 4 things that they are thinking about in today's markets?
Yeah, I think, you know, top of mind right now is staffing. I think this is a Ben take. This is not, I haven't done a lot of research, but I think staffing is on mind. Some partner programs, I've seen that there's been, you know, layoffs in the area. And so they still have revenue numbers to hit, right?
Right.
Most organizations that have a, you know, a significant partner program, usually they've raised some kind of funding. So they have investors to satisfy the needs of the investors. And so there's a lot of pressure. And I think that pressure and they're losing staff is kind of a breaking point, you know, and in a community, you know, the nice thing about the community that we mentioned earlier is you can actually have real conversations of okay, I just lost 3 team, you have 10 partner managers, you just
Right.
lost 3 of them, 30% of your staff. Any ideas on how I can streamline XYZ, because I need some help here. I'm dying. And I think, first of all, people are, that number one is really, they're thinking about staff and taking care of their teams. Um, I think, the other thing is in partnership leaders, heads, if you will, or people in my role, head of partnership, is how do I recruit, onboard, retain partners, right? Um, Again, you either enable your existing partners to grow revenue together, or you recruit new partners and bring them on to get them to help you grow revenue together, or you do a little bit of both, right? And it's finding that balance between all that that's probably critical. But top of mind is, they're getting pressure to bring new partners. They've been working with partners in their ecosystem for a long time. They're moving slow. They kind of know what they're going to see, what they expect. Okay, how do I scale? Because that's what the investor pressure is asking, right? Is how do we grow? And one of the ways to look at that is, okay, I bring on additional partners and get them into the mix. And that's a challenge, I think, that are on top of minds. I don't read everyone's mind, but I think the third thing I would say is, I think the responsibility probably weighs on some leaders. In my role, there's people in the organization at Magentrix that rely on me, Ben, to perform. And, I think that's always on my mind. And it's whether you own your own business or you work for someone or whatever it is, there's always other people around you that rely on you. So that pressure is there. But I think in the partnership world, because it enables so much scale, if you will, so much ability to expand, that pressure feels like maybe it's a little bit more. And I think at least in my case, sometimes I go to bed at night and wonder, okay, did I do everything I can to accomplish my objectives when it comes to the end goal? Whether it's a number of new partners, it's number of partners engaged, it's number of people logging into our portal, whatever that metric is. Did I do everything I can, and did I do my best? My dad, he's always been good to me, and he always taught me, it's like, I don't care if you win. Now, I like to win, I'm competitive. He's like, I don't care if you win. All I want you to do is at the end, look me in the eye and say, hey, Ben or Dad, I did my absolute best. And if we can do that, I think it'll overcome that third objective of, okay, did I, rely on these people, that pressure. So I don't know, I'm sure there's other things on people's minds, but that's what's on my mind.
That's fantastic. That's great. I think it's a great summary for, I think, a great conversation that we had today.
Yeah.
I think sharing that kind of your journey and what you went through and those highlights and communities and what is partnership all about, right? The co-creation, which is super important here, and how you perceive your partners and how they perceive you, right? On day in, day out. This is very, very unique. And first, I would like to thank you for being here and sharing. It's not obvious, right? And I really thank my guests for kind of opening up, because it gives me kind of a mirror, right? In a way, because then I can relate to those topics and kind of find, what I'm struggling at on a daily basis with my customers, and what companies are struggling with their partners, and how we can assist them to alleviate a little bit of that kind of challenge. So thank you so much, Ben. It was a pleasure as always.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of partner now, because what's now and what we just had today is going to be different a month from now. So
absolutely,
let's continue to have these conversations, Eran, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show, and hope some people get value from this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ben. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you
Yeah, you
soon.
too. See
Take
ya.
care.